Just as we thought things might settle down here between Iran and the United States, it appears they have escalated once again. And this all comes as we are marching towards a meeting with Iranian officials and the United States, supposedly happening this Friday in Oman. In the last 12 to 18 hours, tensions have once again risen, as it's been confirmed an F-35 has shot down a Shaheed 139 drone, possibly a 129 drone, depending on the sources that are coming out. Regardless, they have shot down a drone that was harassing the USS Abraham Lincoln. Additionally, 6 Iranian gunboats mounted with armament such as 50 caliber guns approached an American flag, Danish-owned oil tanker, the MT Stena Imperative. They did this in an aggressive and hostile manner as the ship was departing the United Arab Emirates, which is actually where I'm sitting right now in Dubai, not too far away from all this tension and drama that is unfolding here in the Middle East. Now, this is coming from OSINT Defender over on X, which is quoting a maritime security firm, Vanguard Tech, that the Iranian gunboats ordered the oil tanker to halt and prepare for boarding by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. However, this tanker didn't go down without a fight. In response, it sped up and was later rejoined by a U.S. vessel to escort it to Bahrain. So tensions have definitely escalated. We're going to talk about the F-35C shootdown and how that possibly went down here a little bit later on. But first, let's look at what has transpired over the last couple days to land us in this position. So first, President Trump has outlined several red lines for the Iranian regime. The first being no nuclear weapons. And there has been some back and forth between no nuclear program and no nuclear weapons. There's nuance there, which personally I have questions about, but I think it's safe to assume it's really nuclear weapons. Now, the technology for nuclear power, that's all stepping stone to nuclear weapons and a can of worms we can talk about later. Next, significant reduction in Iran's ballistic missile capability. They're big fans of ballistic missiles. We broke that down in our last video. And in fact, their foreign minister is saying we're open to discussing no nuclear weapons for Iran. We have heard this before, but later in his interview, he talks about, let's not talk about things that are impossible.
Things like ballistic missiles, things like proxy forces in the region. I know that the United States has talked about wanting to negotiate about that as well. Is that completely out of the question for you, or is that something you could at least talk about?
President Trump said no nuclear weapons, and we fully agree with that. That could be a very good deal. Of course, in return, we expect sanction lifting. So that deal is possible. Let's do not talk about impossible things.
Which I interpret as ballistic missiles. They're not going to reduce that, as well as the red line of being they have to stop using proxy forces in the Middle East. And this one is so woven deep into their doctrine that I think it also will be a hard no for Iran. All of this might be viewed as potential stall tactics as the Iranian regime reinforces plans, prepares for a potential strike. They had this build up to Operation Midnight Hammer. However, they probably didn't think it was going to actually happen. How many times have we had this escalation and this tension in the Middle East, specifically with Iran, over the last 20 years? And then Operation Midnight Hammer, fast forward to Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela, it's clear that the United States means business, and President Trump is not afraid to send forces in. Now, I do want to talk about how I think this one would be much different than Operation Midnight Hammer. A short surgical strike would not be the end of this. Sustained combat operations, which would undoubtedly be incredibly messy, is how this one would most likely go down. We can dive into that later as well. And as we've seen over the last couple of days, the Iranian president, foreign minister, and other leaders saying they're willing to negotiate. We have also seen this heavy rhetoric from AI-generated videos, propaganda videos, shooting down B-2 bombers, blowing up aircraft carriers, all the way to their parliament and their leadership in their parliament chanting death to America and saying we should do a preemptive strike on Israeli and United States forces in the region. So nonetheless, there's a lot of tension in the region, and who knows how this one is going to play out. So let's dive into the F-35 shootdown. It was no secret that USS Abraham Lincoln was sent to the Middle East. President Trump announced the Armada was on its way, and it arrived. Now, if I'm the Iranian regime, I am all stops trying to figure out how I can strike this carrier strike group, or being ready to. So doing the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance piece of this, coming up with a game plan. Striking the carrier strike group, the Armada, not only is a huge military win, but it's a huge propaganda win and really solidifies their military might, and that's what they need. So what we have seen over the last couple of days, Iranian drones have been launching out of Iran, trying to find the USS Abraham Lincoln. Now, the USS Abraham Lincoln is a stout, robust fighting force. I think that might be an understatement, as everyone's pretty much aware of what a carrier strike group was capable of. Drones have been the game changer. We saw this Operation Rough Rider. We do have a whole series coming out on Operation Rough Rider with the pilots that flew it, as well as Operation Midnight Hammer. But drones have changed the battlescape. A $30,000 drone, a $5,000 drone now has the ability to take out a multi-million-dollar exquisite piece of military technology. So we did see this week, although Navy officials haven't released the details, an unidentified drone entered the airspace over Whidbey Island, and they were able to take it down. We've seen drone technology or counter-drone technology drastically improve over the last couple years. Now, when it comes to fighter jets, what we saw in the early days of this drone warfare was countering it with what I would say exquisite air-to-air missiles, such as the AMRAAM, the Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, AIM-120. It's a radar-guided missile, as well as the AIM-9X, and that's an IR, infrared-guided missile. These are very expensive missiles, upwards of $1 million depending on its variant. And we're using these missiles to shoot down these drones. Enter the AGR-20, or the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. This is a rocket system that has been around since the Vietnam era, or hails back to the Vietnam era. However, it has been modernized and equipped on the F-15E Strike Eagle and now the F-16. It's a laser-guided rocket system able to counter these drones. Still relatively cheap, especially when we compare it to AMRAAMs or the AIM-9X. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars versus hundreds of thousands or potentially $1 million per missile shot here. So most likely this F-35C defending the carrier still had to utilize that AIM-120 or that AIM-9X missile to take down this drone that was threatening the USS Abraham Lincoln, because the F-35C currently does not have the AGR-20 rocket pod. Slapping a rocket pod on a 5th generation stealth fighter kind of negates the stealth characteristics of that fighter jet. It is a rather large and reflective piece of equipment there. However, large magazine, able to counter a lot of drones. So when it comes to magazine depth, the AGR-20 really enhances the counter drone capability. Now, how does this one play out? Again, I don't think this ends like Operation Midnight Hammer, in and out and done. If we're talking regime change, like Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela, up until that happened, I'll be honest, I did not think it was possible for us to go into a country, remove a leader, and then be done. But clearly, thus far, that is what happened. Now, Iran, we have several challenges that come with that. Distance is absolutely a factor. And then we have many nations in the region, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, which at least have publicly said, you cannot operate from our soil, our airspace, nor our territorial waters to conduct a strike into Iran. Behind the scenes, who knows what's playing out, but nonetheless, this is a big logistical and problem factor for the United States if the United States decided to conduct an operation inside Iran, because we have bases, strategic bases in both those countries. The relocation of those assets, the utilization of airspace in order to conduct strikes into Iran would be problematic if those two countries said, you cannot operate from here. Additionally, if we're talking about toppling the Iranian regime, a regime change, this is something that air power alone I don't think can square the corner on. This would be a long and sustained operation in order to effect it. The Iranians have had months to prepare now, realizing that they're vulnerable and capable of being struck. They have a lot of Chinese and Russian hardware. We saw that basically just removed from the equation when it came to Venezuela. So undoubtedly, they've been preparing over the last couple months. They need a win in order to retain power. They have no doubt scattered across the country, gone underground, making a quick removal of any leadership, I think, very problematic, thus entering the sustained operations. I'd be curious to hear your comments down below on what you think and how this might play out, because when it comes to the objective and what the desired end state here, I think this one is problematic, and this one is not going to just end with a quick in and out. All right, we'll see you next time.